Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to Gerald, my newest patron. Thank you for the support. So first up today, this Hertz story continues. What they're going to do is basically a public offering, but it's going to be a little bit different than normal. So certain shareholders plan to sell 37 million shares via a public offering, up to 500 million of which will be repurchased by Hertz. So what's happening here is one of the institutional funds that helped Hertz through those bankruptcy proceedings is now going to liquidate some of their shares, and part of that liquidation will be repurchased by Hertz, the company, just essentially shifting ownership, and then the other half will basically go to the public. The largest selling shareholder would be an investment fund associated with Greg O'Hara, who was named Hertz's chairman back in June. Now, there are myriad reasons why a company may do a stock buyback. In this case, my assumption would be it's Hertz trying to buy back some of the ownership of the company, once again after those bankruptcy proceedings. And it's also less shares available on the market, which will increase the value for existing stakeholders. And it's also being reported that Tesla and Hertz are now talking about the timeline for the delivery of those 100,000 vehicles. There's nothing else, no more information given in this article, so this is headline only. Next up, a new House bill is out with some changes to the EV credit. So the income limit has been lowered to $500,000, $375,000 and $250,000, and that's for joint, head of household, and individual respectively. Then the vehicle price limits have also been increased, so this is good. The SUV price cap is $80,000, which was raised $11,000. Trucks are $80,000, and others, which would include the Model 3, are $55,000. This also includes sedans. So this is not yet official, but this is the latest revision, so we'll see how this unfolds. Next up, it looks like we're getting a feature that has been long requested for some time, but let's go back. If you remember August of 2017, Elon said, "We are going to move all info and settings to the cloud, the server, so any Tesla you drive in the world automatically adjusts to you." Fast forward a measly 4 years, and in this new software release, there is a reference to a feature called Cloud Profiles, where you can enable vehicle sync for individual driver profiles. So the feature isn't ready yet, but it's giving us a preview of what's to come. In the Profiles menu, there will be a new option under each profile called Enable Vehicle Sync. So you will now be able to keep your profile settings the same across your vehicles. When you change a setting, it'll automatically be carried over to your other vehicles. Also, you have to think about when you rent a Tesla, rather than having to go into the menu and change everything just the way you like it, this new feature should be able to put it on your key card or your fob, so when you get in the car, it recognizes your settings from the cloud and transfers them to that other vehicle. Now, yes, there are a lot of questions, and some people are wondering, well, will it have settings from a Model 3 to a Model Y if your family has different types of Teslas? I would imagine certain settings will transfer over, but others like mirrors and things like that might not, just because the seating setup and sizing is different from a Model 3 to a Model X, for example. So here's a screenshot of the driver profiles page, and you can add new drivers, and then you can check Enable Vehicle Sync. Next up, this news item does not surprise me, but Sawyer tells us Tesla China has already canceled the 0% down payment that just came a few days ago and changed it to 10%. Tesla said that zero down payment led to a surge in order volume, and Tesla was worried about estimated delivery dates extending even further, #demand. So now the new minimum down payment for this new Tesla financial leasing program will be 10%, no more zero as an option. Next up, this is from Fortune, and full disclosure, I have not fact checked this. I'm not sure the time that it would require would be worth it. I did a quick search, but nothing really relevant came up. But in just 12 trading days, the Tesla market cap increased almost $400 billion, 392 to be exact. But if this writer is correct, this would be the biggest dollar jump in terms of market cap in that small a period of time. So if true, once again, Tesla stock making history. Next up, it looks like this Tesla user got a text from Tesla saying, "We transitioned into LFP, lithium iron phosphate batteries, at the end of October for standard range vehicles. Now they're not called standard range anymore. We'll call them base model moving forward. but by the time you get a VIN assigned, you will be assigned to a Model 3 with a LFP battery. So generally speaking, LFP batteries are cheaper. You can charge them to 100% without having to worry about battery degradation concerns, and they do reportedly perform a little bit worse in cold weather, but a little bit better in warmer weather compared to their NCA or NCM counterparts. So this is just one anecdote, but I would take this to assume that moving forward, all of the base models now will indeed be equipped with LFP batteries everywhere on the globe. Next up, this is such an awesome and incredible feat from Ryan Huber on YouTube. What he did, he took his Model S refresh and put a regular steering wheel and yes, working stocks in the car. Now, no, this is not an easy fit. However, I'm going to link everything below because he said he was going to auction off basically his time to do a one-off to help somebody with something like this and then give that money to charity. But he is putting everything he's learned and some of how to do this on GitHub. So once again, that's all linked below if you want to look into it. But as mentioned, it's very involved. I think he wrote his own firmware, so you definitely are going to have some engineering experience to do something like this. And I would encourage watching this brief video. The audio in it is great, but I don't want to play it for copyright purposes. But once again, you know where to find it. And directly from Ryan, when I started on this project, I planned to make everything, including the Model 3 wheel, work. Over the time I've had the car, I've grown accustomed to the yoke minus the haptic controls, which remain awful, even in the new version. And guys, look, I've heard this plenty of times, or seen it rather, online, so this is not just Ryan. Anyway, he says, I plan to set the car up as the yoke and the stocks for my normal config, and to toss the round wheel on for fun, rarely. But then I got the controls on the round wheel working, and I'm not going back to the yoke. As mentioned, here is the GitHub with the why, some of the notes, and more info. And if you'd like to subscribe to his YouTube channel, he did say he should be uploading more videos on this topic. Next up, Elon and Missy Cummings might end up in the same room here early next year. They also might not, but sadly, we have the first trial that will be deciding if Autopilot was indeed at fault for the death of somebody in a Model 3. The trial is set to begin January 2022. As mentioned, this was when Jeremy Banner died in 2019 after his Model 3 hit a semi in Florida. Banner's family has actually hired Missy Cummings to testify. Attorneys for Tesla and Musk, on the other hand, could work to get Elon removed from the witness list. And the lawyers have already convinced the judge on the case to deny a request by Banner's family to depose Elon during the evidence gathering process before trial. So, not at all to make light of Jeremy passing in that tragic accident, but it would be very interesting to see Elon and Missy in a room debating this situation in that setting. The public, of course, would not have access to it other than reportings that come out after, but we'll wait and see how this develops. John Redinger shared this quick video clip of the FSD beta, recording some seemingly normal footage. Yes, there's a lot going on, but as you can see, the lines are kind of shaking, cars come and go, which really means there's definitely room for improvement in this perception model. And Elon responded saying neural net upgrades coming that improve persistence across time and space or better object permanence. And then he was asked, is 10.4 still on track for quality assurance today and beta users starting tomorrow? Elon said it's probable. Next up, the VW saga continues as there is much unrest amidst the company's workers and executives. As Deese reportedly this morning said, I'm being frequently asked why I keep comparing us with Tesla. I know this is annoying to some. Even if I no longer talk about Elon Musk, he'll still be there and revolutionizes our industry and keeps getting more competitive quickly. Now, the Volkswagen's Works Council boss, Daniela Cavallo, remember that name. The Works Council is similar to a union, although there are some important differences. We don't have to get into it now, but the Works Council basically represents all of the employees of the company. It's basically just a way where employees can vote for colleagues to then form a group that will work together and represent that employee group to the management and discuss certain ongoing business practices. But clearly the head of this group, Daniele Cavallo, is not very happy with Diess and some of his comments, specifically where his focus has been, saying, "The fascination that you apparently feel for Elon Musk and the effort you're making in staying in contact with him, we would welcome it if it was the same for the huge challenges the company currently faces." So Diess really is behind a rock and a hard place. Volkswagen has over 500,000 employees and people all over the map, and works councils and unions, and needless to say, navigating this huge ship that is VW is going to be a near impossible task for Diess. He's going to ruffle some feathers. There's zero chance he can please everybody, so we'll see how it shakes out. A quick note here from Baby Tesla on Twitter: unlike the new Model S, the rear cup holders are now located under the rear display in the new Model X. Here is a quick image showing where the cup holders are. So hopefully there's enough distance between here and the screen so that if you have a tall tumbler or something, it's not blocking the screen, but I would imagine Tesla has thought that one through. Next up, one quick revelation from the COP26 summit. Won't get into detail here. However, there's this new GFANZ, or Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It's a pledge that states by 2050, 30 years from now, all assets managed by these financial institutions will be aligned with net zero emissions. These financial institutions, by the way, are managing over $130 trillion. So they are somehow claiming that all of that $130 trillion will be aligned with net zero emissions by 2050. What this would mean? Well, some researchers are saying for the first time in history, the aggregate effect of the combined pledges by 194 different countries might bring the world to below 2 degrees warming, with more than a 50% chance of doing so. Steve Trent, the founder and CEO of the Environmental Justice Foundation, said, "We need rules which force financial institutions to stop funding fossil fuels completely. We can't keep kicking the can down the road on fossil fuel divestment. It's not enough to publish net zero by 2050 plans if those plans rely on creative carbon accounting over real decarbonization across the whole of our economies." So this is one of those things that sounds great on paper, but who in the world is going to enforce this? How are you going to enforce this? And this is by 2050, so that's 30 years from now. I think we should set targets maybe for the next 5 years, the next 10 years. I mean, I'm not sure if they've ever heard of the SMART goal setting procedure, but it sounds like it's something that would be good to do. I think we should be focused on more short-term achievable targets, not these theoretical things that may or may not happen 30 years from now. It's crazy to me, but it is what it is. Next up, it's being reported that the F-150 Lightning has up to 160,000 reservations. Yes, these should start deliveries next year, but Ford's production schedule has about 80,000 for their production supply by 2024. So we'll see how many of these $100 fully refundable deposits convert over to actual orders whenever that order configurator comes online. It was supposed to be last week, but it's since been delayed. Interestingly enough, here last week, I brought up Waymo saying, what are they doing? We haven't heard much from them. And lo and behold, Waymo now bringing its autonomous vehicles to New York City for manually driven mapping. They'll start mapping the city streets using manually driven vehicles with 2 people riding inside. Waymo will not have more than 5 vehicles on the street at a time to start out, and they will be driving in Manhattan, primarily south of Central Park. It will be the Chrysler Pacifica minivans to start, but later they will include the company's Jaguar I-Pace SUVs as well, which those are already being tested in San Francisco. Right now, Waymo's operations do not meet New York's current definition for testing and are therefore not subject to any permitting requirements. I'll be very curious to watch how this plays out, because we have to remember in 2017, GM-backed Cruise announced plans to test its self-driving vehicles in Lower Manhattan, but those plans were later scuttled with little explanation as to why. New York City is arguably going to be the most difficult place, at least in the United States, for autonomy. If you've never been there, it is chaos with pedestrians, bikers, walkers, fast drivers, all of the above. I consider myself to be an excellent driver. I think I have great reaction time. But the one time I had to drive through the heart of New York City, I will admit it was different. You have to be on high alert and be aware, as people don't give you as much space and distance as you'd be used to elsewhere. Next up, Ford is making a move to deleverage its company with its new ESG financial plan. So have a listen to part of what they're doing.
Breaking news from Ford. I want to get straight over to Phil LeBeau, who joins us with the details there. Phil. Andrew, take a look at shares of Ford, which have had a heck of a run over the last week and a half. Well, this morning they're indicating a little bit higher. The company announcing that it plans to buy back up to $5 billion in debt. This will be done through a cash tender offer. They're going to be paying off some of the more expensive bonds that, by the way, they took out at the beginning of the pandemic. Remember back in March and April of last year, they needed to borrow a lot of money to make sure that they had some cushion. Well, they're going to be doing this. This is part of an ESG finance plan that the company is announcing. And the plan includes the potential for issuing potentially a $1 billion green bond. The company has not made a final decision on whether or not that will happen. It also plans on financing EV investments through this ESG finance plan, as well as funding clean manufacturing. All of this coming as the company sitting on $25.6 billion in debt, but before this announcement, more than $30 billion in cash. So they're putting some of that cash to use. What does Ford's finances, what's the state of them? Pretty good shape right now.
And Ford's CFO was actually on CNBC Live this morning, and he was asked point blank if Ford plans to circumvent or change the dealership model. He 100% avoided the question, so I would interpret that to mean his answer is no. They were talking about margins and if Ford was considering that, and he didn't even touch the question. Last thing for today, the Fisker Ocean will use CATL cells and charge at a peak rate of around 250 kilowatts. Fisker reiterated that this vehicle is on track for a November 22 production start. Now, I personally am not putting a ton of stock in listening to what Fisker says, but I wouldn't hate it if this vehicle made it to market. I think it's a decent looking car. Anyway, they're looking at 5 gigawatt hours of cells annually from CATL to Fisker from 2023 to 2025. They mentioned 2 different packs, one NMC and one LFP, and as mentioned, the 250 kilowatts of peak charge, which will be supplementary to the solar roof that Fisker has previously confirmed for the Ocean vehicle. So let me know, where do you guys stand on Fisker? Are any of you rooting for them? Here is the vehicle. Like I said, I think it's a decent looking vehicle. I think the interior looks a lot like the Ford Mach-E, and I like this image, although probably just a rendering. But anyway, that is all for today. Please take a second to like the video if you did. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.